Hey everybody, this is Perch. I'm not sure who this video is for. This video could be for creators, it could be for fans, it could be for nobody, i.e., the average people who watch my show, which is nobody. No, I'm kidding. Oh, now I insulted the 5 people who do watch this show. Oh, well. Yeah, well, these are the things. My daughter, who does my videos now, and I feel bad every now and then because I curse in them. But she doesn't listen to the show. I mean, God, why would she? Anyway, she's working off notes. I should explain that. You know what I will do? I'll actually interview her briefly, and she can explain how she does it. It's very funny. It's very charming, maybe clever. It's definitely lazy, but I've had one of my philosophies in life. Lazy has multiple meanings. If you work extremely efficiently, so you don't have to do the same job over and over. Like if you're a software engineer, if you're a coder, and you work very efficiently to write really good code that doesn't have bugs, so you don't have to redo it. You could call that lazy. The person's like, well, I don't want to just keep doing code. I want to just get done with it. I'm lazy. I had a friend who would say, I'm very lazy. That's why I'm such a good coder, because I don't want to keep coding. And anyway, and there's other types of lazy. But regardless, I I'm not sure who this video is for. And so my daughter's like, who are your videos for? Do you make them for other creators? Do you make them for just people who are reading? Do you like what's your intention? And I go, probably the most honest answer is I make them for myself, because I'm driving around and I have an idea in my head, I get it out, and it winds up being good speech practice in a way. I do a lot of speeches. I hear my voice is distinctive. So one day, you're going to be in a room, they're going to bring some guest speaker in, and the person's going to start talking like, holy shit, that's Purge. Anyway, it will happen. Maybe not. Anyway. So where I'm getting at with this video is, some people wrote me and were asking me, hey, what do you think about Marvel hiring Eric Larson? Eric Larson's doing Spider-Man Noir. And that is kind of one of the multiverse Spider-Man. It's the one that was voiced by Nick Cage in the Spider-Verse film. And I forget when Spider-Man Noir first came out. It's at least 10 years ago, I think. I may have the timeline really wrong. Not going to go look it up right now, but it's been a little while, and the character took off, sort of. They've done a limited series on it. He's shown up in a couple of Spider-Verse events. It's kind of the hard-boiled, deep kind of detective is Spider-Man. And it's a fun concept. Anyway, Eric Larson's been hired to do this. Eric Larson's done work for Marvel off and on. He was obviously part of the original Image 6 that left Marvel, but he came back multiple times. It never really felt like Eric Larson had a really adverse relationship with Marvel. It was always great. He wasn't like a crown jewel either. Eric Larson was always kind of the odd. Both him and Jim Valentino. I should just leave it there. Eric Larson's kind of odd. Yes. Uh, he is an odd individual. But both he and Jim Valentino always felt like the two kind of didn't quite fit the other, hot image creators at the time. You had your Todd McFarlane and your Rob Liefeld, your Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri. Like, those were the big marquee names. And then Eric Larson came in after Todd on a couple issues, or, a couple comics. And, there's nothing wrong with Eric Larson, but he always kind of, the company didn't promote him at the same level as some of the other big guys. But he's come back and he's done work. Well, I think the question people have had is, if you remember back, now it's a little more than a year ago, I think, the copyright for Mickey Mouse came up, and Eric Larson did a bit where the Savage Dragon and his wife, technically Savage Dragon's son, who's also the Savage Dragon, his wife, who kind of had been written as being a porn addict, just gets overly horny for no apparent reason, and will get herself into orgies and kind of different things. This also coincided with the turn where Eric Larson decided to go ahead and make the comic, R or worse rated. So you got a lot of shots of that. He'd draw her like jumping and falling and, like, complete vagina shot, fully rendered. There's a bit of Savage Dragon just blasting her. I mean, look, it's more than art. Anyway, he went with this. And a bunch of people actually were like, I thought these comics were for kids. No, the Savage Dragon was never for kids in this way. I mean, it had lots of violence. People's get torn up and arms and things getting blown up and sawed off and running around and blood gushing everywhere. Sharks biting people in half. The Savage Dragon was not a kid's book. And it was, but it kind of was one of those things where in the comic shop for your retailer, it looked like a superhero book. It was a superhero book. It didn't have a for adults only label on it for a long time. So shop owners were like, I don't know, you put it on the shelf. And Savage Dragon was one of those books I've mentioned before where I've had, and it's been rare, but parents come in and be like, hey, you sold this comic, what the hell's going on here? That happened with Savage Dragon a few times where it was, it wasn't labeled clearly. Somebody in my shop sold it. It's kind of one of those books I would tell people who work for me, like, hey, just heads up, that comic is not one to just casually just have out on the stands. If a kid's buying it, just make sure the parents aware that there's some stuff in there. Again, usually violence, but then took a turn toward, just more adult material. They did a threesome with Savage Dragon and his wife and kind of his long-term kind of friend who got aged up, which is a whole other weird thing. And again, people are flying around and getting in the bedroom, and it's fine. I don't know best how to describe it. It was an orgy. So anyway, the Mickey Mouse copyright comes up, and so Eric Larson was probably the first, definitely the biggest profile creator to do it, but one of the first people who threw Mickey Mouse in the book as kind of a bit character. And the basic bit was that that Savage Dragon's wife go to meet. They're hanging out in San Francisco because that's where they live, and they meet Mickey Mouse, and Mickey Mouse is a pervert. He's basically like, hey, I'd like to Steamboat Willie your vagina, whatever. He did some vagina, like it was all these like puns. It's like I'm gonna Steamboat Willie your clam, and it's like, okay. So he was a perv, and this surprised Savage Dragon and his wife were like, oh, we were big fans, but this guy's a creep. And that was kind of, I mean, there was, I'm sure, some meta commentary in there about like people being fans of Disney and all excited and then coming to realize that they're a bunch of weirdos. Anyway, that's kind of what it seemed to be, or not as nice and wholesome once you peeled back the cover. So then Mickey Mouse got very horny and really wanted to, I think, flick her bean, I think is was one of the lines in there. And so over several issues, they did this, God, what is the name of it? It's the race to the bay. It's like the streakers race, bay to streakers or something. So anyway, I forget what the name is. It's an actual thing. Anyway, his wife's running in it and she's running nude. And Mickey Mouse shows up and then basically just tries to rape her throughout this race. This is a comic book. People are listening to this like, what the? Anyway, long story short, Minnie Mouse shows up, and then Minnie is also kind of horny and perverted. So it was kind of a bit. And I don't think they've come back to it, but this went on for, I don't know, 4 or 5 issues. So then Eric Larson gets hired by Marvel, recently, like now, to write this Spider-Man Noir comic. And so the question a lot of people have is, well, I don't understand what is and isn't a cancelable offense at Marvel. On one hand, you could be Chuck Wendig and you can write, Trump supporters can eat a big bucket of shit or whatever he wrote. And then you can have a comic creator taking one of their showcase IP, Mickey Mouse, and basically, turning that character into a rapist in a comic book, and you can get hired. So why, what is the standard here? And so I guess the answer to that, because I and several of you have asked in the past, like, hey, on one hand, creators can say, I'm a conservative, and then they don't seem to get work, and that's not as true as YouTube would have you believe. But anyway, they could say that, and then you got another creator over there who's talking about baseball bats to the teeth, and they do get hired. It's like it seems like a very not well established standard. It seems like something where people are the rules seem like there aren't rules. They're just kind of made up randomly and doesn't seem entirely fair. And the general answer to that is yeah, sort of there it isn't applied fairly. It isn't applied consistently because you got to think about Marvel somewhat decentralized. Yes, there's a team. Yes, there's a staff, but it's not like probably a lot of companies you work for where maybe there's a staff meeting once a week and people are like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And there's a chain of command and, there's an employee handbook and all that kind of stuff. Marvel is a lot looser than that. A lot of companies in the arts are. And so, there's kind of guidelines, but, they're not well understood. They're not well enforced. They're often not written down. Sometimes for legal reasons, you don't want to write them down, quite frankly. And the employees are working with a bunch of contractors, a bunch of freelancers. All these comic creators are freelancers. They do that for a lot of reasons. It allows a more transient workforce. It means that you can fire them instantly. You just stop renewing the contract, and you don't have to pay out anything. There's no severance. There's no warning. There's no HR. There's no nothing. And a lot of the creators for a while, I think, enjoyed that flexibility because it means I can go anywhere I want. Now that's turned out to be less true, but you don't have to pay health insurance and all the rest of the stuff. So that's kind of the grouping that's come up. And with freelancers like that, you have less ability to enforce rules. You can say if you do this, you will get fired. Except there is no firing. You're a freelancer. You actually don't get fired. I know it sounds like a nuance, but I'm talking from a legal perspective. Being fired means you have a job with a bunch of benefits and other things, and then you are released from that job. A work for hire freelancer is like, I'm paying you to do this, and I will pay you $500 for this. And if I want to, I will terminate the contract, which sounds like the same thing. And to the humans involved, it feels like the same thing, but it actually is very different. And so, the rules are not applied consistently. You have different editors with different standards. You have some editors who worry about, who are very, there's an editor in DC that is, if you insult anything, even or give the appearance of, or like or follow somebody who attacks in their mind anyone in the LGBTQ community, you will not work for that person. They will not hire you. They will not give you work. They will not renew if you have a contract. That is their red line, and that's the thing they care about. You have another editor DC that is like, I don't care about that. I care about, putting up numbers for my books. I mean, it's just there's different standards in different editors, and the editors aren't asked to enforce them consistently, so they don't. And that's just kind of the way it breaks down. I think, to the Eric Larson point, the big sin, and maybe this is why I said I don't know who this video is for, creators or fans. If your goal is to stay working in comics, whether it's for one company or multiple companies, the key there is don't the biggest sin, the biggest thing that will get you fired, the red line you should never cross is don't give the editor additional work to do. Meaning, if you do something that causes the editor to have to call you up and say, hey, you did this tweet over here, this is not a good tweet. I don't know why you did this tweet. If you do that, your likelihood of continuing to get employment, certainly from that editor, is low. If you fly under the radar, if you do a bunch of stuff and, for whatever reason, it never rises to the attention, people don't latch onto it, you can pretty much get away with whatever the fuck you want. If you don't give them work to do, you pretty much will survive just fine. So that's why some people have asked me, why is it that some of these writers will post lunatic things on Twitter or Blue Sky? Nadia Shamas, right? Shamas? Nadia posted absolutely anti-Semitic, crazy things. Just full stop things that would disgust a normal human being. Got hired at Marvel? No problem. but now he had an insignificant following. Nobody cared. Yeah, and comic books is insulated somewhat from the what they would perceive as Comicsgate, but the people who are like, this comic creator saying offensive things, or people on YouTube. If you start getting a critical drinker level of audience looking at Gretchen, for example, for the Red Hood, and then you get Fox News or Newsmax or one of those stations who picks up on that. They'd say, okay, there's millions of audiences here watching the video, and I'm going to do a news story on it because I need something to fill. And now it's starting to bubble up into being noisier, and to the point that the editor has to deal with it. Then the contract gets terminated, and the person that's what gets them. By the way, this is not me saying what you got to do, guys, is you got to just really get everybody outraged to the point that there's so much noise that you make them unemployable. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that the weird part about this business is it's less about what you do and don't do, and it's more about, did you cause annoyance to the company you're working for? And because it's not always intuitive what does it. I have a comic writer who kind of who did one of the things I mentioned earlier in this video. Um, Write me a note at one point going, why did everybody care about this? I did these 5 things, these 10 things. Why was it this 6th thing that got them angry? It's like, there's not a rhyme or reason to it. It's just that 6th thing. Maybe it was cumulative. Maybe it built up over time, or that one just hit the wrong people the wrong way, and you drew attention to yourself. I don't know. Could be either way. Could be either thing. Anyway, that's I know it's not a satisfying answer, but that's an honest one. So be that as it may. Take that for what you will, whoever this video was from. But whoever you are, thanks for listening.